It's
Adam Schumacher, maker.
all right. It's 6:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Wareham Conservation Commission meeting of Wednesday, July 7th, 2021. We have Carol, Kwame, Michael, Alyssa, Ron, Sandy, and Associate Denise. So the first thing on the agenda is set of minutes. We have minutes for February 5th, 2020. Here's the problem. The people that were there were myself, Kenny Baptiste, who was killed in a car accident, motorcycle accident, Mary Taggart, who resigned, Robin Lesson, who left the area, Jim Smith, who stepped down, and David Hall, who has left the area, which means, and Alyssa was absent at the time, so I was the only one here. I've gone through all my notes and I find the meeting minutes to be complete and accurate. Trouble is,
What?
who can make the motion in the second?
I
Can
can.
anybody?
I was there too, except I was in like Denise's shoes and just watching.
That doesn't, you weren't,
I think Sandy, any member can make and
I
second
can
the
make a
motion. They
motion.
didn't have to be necessarily present.
okay, I have a motion
Accept the
Second,
minutes.
and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
Well,
Okay, so I think it's,
Our clients get.
I think it's 105. Right?
Always compliance first.
I
You
think
have
that's how it
to,
has
you
to
have to
go.
have people voting in favor of it.
Yeah, I need to do a roll call. Thank you.
Clients enjoy.
Carol,
Sounds like a big responsibility.
Kwame,
Aye.
you're abstaining, correct?
Aye.
Michael,
certainly, yeah, I certainly agree with that because I was there. Go ahead. So yeah, I'm in favor of it.
no, I need you to say I abstain.
Oh, abstain.
Alyssa,
Abstain. I was-
Ron,
Abstain.
Kwame, I need to ask again.
I'll abstain.
And did I see Carol on? I'm not seeing her, so this will be the vote
She's
of
there.
one.
Carol's there. She's just muted. Carol, you're muted. There you go.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I couldn't get connected.
Carol, we're taking a vote on the approval of the minutes of February 5th, 2020. You were not there or on the board, so
Right.
will you vote to abstain?
Yes,
Okay, the vote is 105 for the February 5th, 2020 minutes. And Dave, will you make sure they get submitted to the clerk?
Yes, I think though that members don't have to abstain though, because you need to have so many people voting in favor of it. Otherwise, it's not a favorable vote.
Well, one is a favor. They can't, unless they've spent the time to go through the videotape to understand all the discussion at the time, they can't vote for it.
I don't
I
agree,
think-
but anyway, we'll go forward with it the way you're doing it. Go ahead.
Okay. The next set of meetings is a February 19th, 2020. Elissa and I were there. No one else on the board was there. I've gone through the minutes in my notes and I found them to be accurate and complete.
I move to accept the minutes.
Of February
Second.
19th, 2020. I have a motion and a second. Carol,
I abstained from that one as well. I
Kwame,
wasn't on the committee.
Abstain.
Michael,
Yeah, abstain.
Elissa,
Lisa. I vote
Lisa.
for it. Yes.
Ron,
Abstain.
Sandy, yes. 204. There you go. So please, Mr. Pichette, get that to the, do I have to come in and sign? I think so, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Do
there
I-
we go.
David? David, do I have to sign as well?
No, just the chairperson signs the
All
minutes.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll start off with our first public hearing.
Oh, we will, I guess. Absolutely. It's a public hearing. Notice of public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw, Division 6. A public hearing will be held on Wednesday, July 7th, 2021 at 6:30 PM on the notice of intent for Cape and Islands Realty LLC, care of GAF Engineering, Inc., 266 Main Street, Wareham, Massachusetts, 02571. To raise an existing dwelling and construct a new dwelling located on Assessor's Map 129A-1, Lot 101, 31 Agawam Lake Shore Drive, Wareham.
Thank you. Is there anybody here representing this project?
Yes, this is Brian Grady with GAF Engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Burchett. We'll read the project.
Okay, the project again is at 31 Agawam Lakeshore Drive, and the project involves the demolition of an existing dwelling and the construction of a new, larger dwelling with new septic system and associated deck and driveway. This work is fairly close to the pond. They're showing on the plan that the work is just outside the 30-foot no activity zone to the pond with the deck. I did look at the site, and I do believe there's a fringe of wetland that exists on the edge of the pond. So I would say that that has to be revisited so that's reflected accurately. And that might push the 30-foot no activity zone line back by 5 to 10 feet potentially. So I would say that's something we're going to have to see before moving forward with this. They also are proposing dry wells for this project as well. Those are located sort of closer again to the pond. So I'm just curious to ask about separation to groundwater and if it's felt that that would be sufficient to be placed in that particular location, or if it should be located further up the slope somehow.
Any other? Okay, Brian, your
well-
turn.
Yeah, well, as far as the dry wells go, we would propose, just the shallow chambers. So there would be separation of the groundwater. Water tables, just probably the pond elevation, just below elevation 14, and the ground behind the structure is 18 to 19. So we will be able to get separation of groundwater. What was the other comment? Possible fringe wetland. I'd have to take another look at that. I didn't look closely at that. I know there's some fringe pepper bush, maybe some blueberry bush. I didn't know if just a few plants qualified as a wetland, but I'll have to take a closer look at that and see how we need to address that.
Okay.
We did get a DEP file number for the project, but at this point, as I mentioned, I would recommend a continuance to look at this additional issue.
And I did attend the Board of Health meeting regarding this, and they are continuing it. They've not approved the septic system or the layout of the septic system. Is that right, Brian?
No, not formally. I have had a subsequent discussion with Mr. Ethier, and we will be coming back with a revised plan.
Okay. Questions on the board? Carol,
No questions.
Kwame,
No questions. I need to visit the site.
Michael,
Yeah, I do want to make a couple of statements here. First of all, in reading the notice of intent, it looked like the applicant is a Mr. Spallini, who is a mechanic on Cranberry Highway. If that's the case, my mother and I are a frequent customer of that auto mechanic, and that neither my mother or myself have any financial interest in this property. That's number one. Number two, it looks like that this property does have a slope going from Lakeshore Drive yeah, I'm sorry, Agawam Lakeshore Drive rather, down to the water. And it looks like that that there's a proposal to put a driveway kind of at the top of the property. Is that correct?
That's correct, at the highest
Okay.
point adjacent to the road, yep.
Okay, now, just out of curiosity, because I do have a little concern about possible, I guess maybe runoff going down towards the pond. Would that driveway be a little similar to the neighbor's property? Be just in design?
It
Or not?
probably will be similar, yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Melissa?
I think the only question I have is, there's an awful lot of brush and debris all in the back area. And, you know, there's an area that I'm sure that he would like to have a deck or whatever, to go down and put his boats on it. So I'm just sort of curious as to if those items have been talked about with the development of this property.
There's no proposal for a floats or a pier or anything. You're correct, there is a lot of debris there, though, so there would need to be just a general site cleanup. But there's been no discussion about a pier or a float or anything like that, no.
And David, what would you think of a pier or float there? There's the next door neighbor, I think, has 3 or 4 piers and floats. So I can't imagine that this one doesn't want them too.
They may at some point in the future, but as Brian mentioned, there's no proposal at this point in time. I just hope that that is brought up to whoever ends up being the one purchasing this site, so they know they can't just go out there and throw something in. But at this point, there's nothing proposed. If somebody did come forth and propose something, we would have to evaluate it. And if it meets our standards, then I don't see any reason why a dock could not be permitted there.
Thanks.
Ron?
No questions at this time. I'm gonna go and visit the site this week.
Okay, Denise?
Now, put on your talkie.
Denise, you're on mute.
Muted.
Do we have any drawings or anything on this yet? 'Cause
The plan was sent out over a week ago.
Yeah, let me pull that up here. Hold on.
While we're doing that, Brian, any idea who owns the 3 boats that are on the shoreline?
I don't, that might be the prior owner. As I said, there was a lot of stuff left behind, so there will need to be a general cleanup done.
It looks like a pretty nice kayak.
Sandy, make him an offer.
What I was there was at the Board of Health meetings, there was a note that the house was condemned, but there's no sign or sticker on it that says condemned. I was
Yeah, I
surprised.
have not confirmed if it's condemned or not. I believe what I'm told, it was last inhabited maybe 3 years ago.
Okay, yeah, the doors are all unlocked and wide open, so who knows what's going on. All right, we're waiting for Mr. Pichette to bring up the plan.
So as you can see, the top view is the existing structure and the bottom is the proposed structure and grading, with the septic system being up close towards the road.
And do we have a permeable parking area? As it's very close to the water.
Well, it may be similar to the neighbors, which is paved. The parking up at the street is just outside the buffer zone. They haven't told me a surface yet, but I'm imagining it probably will be a paved surface as the neighbors is.
Anything else? Is there anybody on the line who'd like to comment on this project? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to continue until
So
July 21st.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, Carol,
Yes.
Kwame,
Yes,
Michael,
Yes.
Lissa,
Yes.
Ron, Sandy. It's continued until 7:21.
Yes.
Thank you.
Little late. Okay, the next one is a hearing on George and Carrie
Hey, Jim.
Carrie Barnett. They have asked to be continued until 7:21.
Barrett,
Barrett, did I say? What?
Barnett.
Barrett, I know that. They've asked to be continued until July 21. Is there anybody in line like comment on this before we continue? I see none, so I need a motion to continue the hearing until July 21st.
Okay.
motion to continue the hearing until July 21st.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, Carol,
Yes.
Kwame,
Yes,
Michael,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Yes.
Ron, Sandy, yes, we're continued until July 21st. The next hearing is Paul and Phyllis Belzeraki.
Bellistracci.
Thank you, at 14A Old Woods Road. Is there anybody here representing this project?
Yes, Mike Pimentel with JC Engineering.
Okay, Mike. Mr. Pichette,
This project site is at 14A Old Woods Road, and this project also involves the demolition of an existing home and the reconstruction of a new, larger home and garage with associated driveway, new septic system, and grading as shown on the site plan. So the existing house is obviously quite a bit bigger, which is outlined in red here, with an attached 24 by 26 foot garage. The new house is being pulled further away from the edge of the pond than what exists there currently. The septic system is located as far away as they can make it on this particular lot. And they were limited to keeping this as a 2-bedroom house. They originally had tried to propose a 3-bedroom house, but the Board of Health required that it be reduced only to a 2-bedroom. And so that's what we have, and the Board of Health has approved that septic system. They are proposing erosion control between the work and the resource area as seen on the plan. I would ask maybe that stretch of hay bales along the edge where the dock is be pulled in as tight to the work as possible, so as to create a larger setback to the pond. We do have a DEP file number for the project. So given that and the fact that the proposed house is outside the 30-foot zone to the wetland resource area, I would recommend the approval of the project with the standard conditions. The added conditions that the hay bales be pushed as far from the pond as possible, and also for the inclusion of dry wells for the house and garage runoff.
would you be concerned about the dry wells and the water table?
I think again, the elevation, if it were to be placed somewhere up in this area, I think it would be high enough. But that's something the engineer would probably have to respond to.
Okay. Mike, any comments?
I was there today. I have no comments.
You're good? Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Questions on the board? Carol,
No.
Kwame,
no questions, thank
Michael,
Oh, I'm sorry. I earlier, I have no questions now, but I think Sandy and myself got confused with myself and the other Michael, the engineer. I'm sorry. Continue.
okay,
You gotta
Elissa?
love Zoom, right? You just gotta
Yes.
love being back to Zoom.
Yes, Alyssa,
Done.
Ron?
Sorry, no questions.
Denise?
No questions.
I do have a question. How old is that dock that's there? It looks brand new to me. Was that ever permitted, Dave?
I don't know whether or not that was formally permitted. That was a question I also had asked at the initial meeting when we talked about this. So I don't know if if the engineer has looked into determining whether or not that actually has a Chapter 91 license or not, but I think that is something we need to get a response on.
Do you want to delay approval until we have a response?
Yes.
Well, I can speak to whether or not it has a Chapter 91 license. I can tell you right now, it does not. I haven't seen anything at the registry that shows that being recorded. I know the owner took ownership of this property, I want to say in 2010. He may be on this call right now, but I believe that when he purchased in 2010, the dock was already there. I don't think he actually put the dock in himself. So it's always been there, but it does not have a Chapter 91 license associated with it.
But if
Has it been rebuilt recently?
To be honest with you, Dave, I don't know. I don't think so. But I mean,
there's no way those decks on that pier are 10 plus years old.
I don't know if Paul is on this Zoom call right now. Maybe he can speak to it. Paul, are you on this Zoom call?
I see a Paul on the call. I'm not sure if it's him. He's currently muted.
Well, I think maybe Sandy,
Yes.
if the commission
Oh,
wishes.
I think he unmuted himself.
I was just able to unmute, I'm sorry. There was a dock currently on the property when we bought it. And that dock is a dock that I purchased and put on the property. 2010.
So this is not the original dock. This is a replacement one that you purchased and installed?
Correct,
Said in 2010.
correct.
Did you have a Chapter 91 license for it?
I did not know that I needed one, so no, I did not.
Dave, what's your recommendation? We don't even know if this configures to the dock that existed.
Well, no, we don't know that, or, if it meets our current standards or not. So obviously, I would say that we're going to have to require an application to be submitted for that, and to get it properly permitted. It's up to the commission as to whether or not you want to see that removed at this point in time until it gets properly permitted, which is the commission's right to do, since it's not formally approved or permitted.
An option is that we continued the hearing on this property pending a formal application, notice of intent for the dock?
Yeah,
Then
I
we can
guess,
then we can deal with the dock independent of the house structure?
yeah, the applicant can certainly request a continuance and amend the application to include that structure, which we then could permit all as part of this if it conforms to our standards. There would have to be some re-advertisement of the notice, the legal notice, because there was nothing stated about a dock previously. Mike,
Is
what do
the
you
home
think about that situation? Mike,
Is the
you on there?
Sorry, Paul, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
And any comments on that?
I will do whatever the board recommends. I would like to try to go forward with the construction of the house and then do the permitting as you require. If you need me to pull a dock, I'll pull a dock, whatever you folks want.
So what you're saying is your priority is to move forward with the house, and if that's the case, you would be okay with the removal of the dock at this point in time?
Yes.
All right, so the commission could condition the approval with that as a condition.
So my question would be is we would require the removal of the dock prior to any construction starting, correct?
Yes, and I wouldn't imagine it would take very long to do that. It's, these are not like the piers that you'd see in the ocean. They're relatively mobile.
And the dock would have to be stored on the upland between the hay bales and the edge of the water. That's about the only place there is. Dave, would that be acceptable?
Yeah, I would think there would be some place where they could store it within the limit of work area, or if not, then somewhere off-site.
Or down by the fire pit?
Yeah,
Okay,
as
so
long as it's in the upland area.
Okay, no, that fire pit's within the 30-foot no work zone, so it's too close to the water. So it'd have to be up someplace on the property, Paul. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we would issue a standard order of conditions with the hay bales and the dry wells, plus the removal of the dock from the water and storage on upland before the conditions can be released for construction of the house.
Okay. You can put it up near the shed.
Any other comments from anybody before you're all right with this? I'm not going to ask each individually. Does anybody have an objection if this is the way we go with this project? Okay. Is there anybody on the line that would like to comment on this project? I'm hearing none.
Motion to close the hearing.
Second.
I have a motion to close the hearing. All in favor, Carol,
Yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Melissa, Ron,
Yes.
Sandy. The hearing is closed. Someone wants to take a shot at the order of conditions?
Order of conditions would include the usual and customary orders of condition that we have, as well as the removal of the dock until such time as we hear about a, what's it called, 91?
No, we need them to submit a notice of intent to us for the dock.
Notice of intent for the dock. Does the dock have to have any, anything special with it?
That's,
Anything
the
additional?
state has to issue a 91, but we have to approve it first.
Oh, all right. So we want this to have the usual and customary, I'm losing all my words tonight.
Standard order of conditions with the
Thank
additional
you.
condition that the dock will be removed until a notice of intent is filed.
And dry
Plus the
wells.
And dry wells.
Sorry.
And it will be removed on the, to the upland area, not within the 30-foot no work zone.
Okay, did someone say about the hay bales move close to the construction site?
Nope, we can add that. We talked about the dry well.
And you said the dry well, so there's
Yeah.
three conditions above and beyond our standard order of condition.
Correct.
Okay, I think that's the motion.
Second.
Excuse me, before you do that, how many dry wells are being proposed?
Mike,
Well, it'll depend. We have ample room to groundwater here, so I would think 500-gallon chambers, 2 of them would suffice.
2. All right.
Okay. I heard a motion and a second. I'm going to ask for a roll call. Carol,
Yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Michael, Alyssa,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Sandy, it's approved. Before you start any work, Mike, get their documents from Mr. Bichette, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Right. Next continued hearing is BERE LLC, Adam Schumacher.
Shoemaker.
Shoemaker off the solar panels off of Old North Carver Road. Okay, let me pull my notes out. Thank you. Okay, and is there anybody here representing this project?
Yes, this is Adam Schumacher. I'm here, and Stacy Minahane is also here from Beals and Thomas.
Hi, all.
Hi,
Hello.
Stacy. So Sarah can't make it, and you're filling in, huh?
I'm filling in for Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Bichette.
Okay, let me just get this plan pulled up here.
And Dave, I have an aerial if it's helpful as well, so that I could discuss the 2 updates since the last meeting, but whatever your preference is.
All right, I'll bring this up for the moment, and then we can switch out if you have something that you would prefer to show.
Sure.
So this project site is off of North Carver Road, and this project involves the construction of a commercial solar array within bordering vegetated wetland, riverfront area of the Weweannick River, bordering land subject to flooding, and in the buffer zone to inland bank. The project is also proposed within the 50-foot no activity zone under the Wareham Wetland Protective Bylaw. The project is to construct a 3 megawatt AC and 7.3 megawatt DC commercial solar array and battery storage facility within the existing Cranberry Bogs. The project is proposed as a dual use project under the state's SMART program. This is a provision that was added to the state law to allow for renewable energy projects on agricultural land, as long as the project meets certain criteria and the land remains in agricultural use, and where the land continues to be farmed to produce the underlying crop. In looking at the SMART guidelines, they indicate projects of this nature should be no more than 2 megawatts. So this proposal, as far as I can see, doesn't meet that guideline. I don't know, Stacy, do you have any, or Adam, do you have any comments about that particular issue?
Yeah, the dual use guidelines are currently under revision, and the straw proposal for revising those guidelines actually allows for a larger than 2 megawatt AC limit. So we are proposing this size in connection with those proposed revisions.
But at this point, those revisions have not been made.
That's correct.
Okay. The proposal would be to install the solar panels on the active cranberry bogs at a height of about 10 to 15 feet high. The panels would be supported by pilings that would be driven or screwed into the ground. Underground electrical lines would also have to be installed within the bog to connect the panels. These would potentially be in groundwater. So I did have some questions about how would flooding bogs work with underground lines all through the area? Is there some sort of shock potential during flooding of bogs? I would like to hear about that. There would also be battery storage units in the buffer zone to the bogs proposed. These would be in 2 locations indicated on the plan, which are these black boxes that you see. One of them is here and the other one is down in this space right here. And these 2 spots are areas that are just open sand areas in the buffer zone to the bogs. So there's no vegetation removal that would be needed for that. Beyond proposing the large-scale project within the wetland, which does, in my opinion, pose some potential impact to groundwater, the project is also proposed within riverfront area of the Wewianick River. Part of the proposal requires some type of security fencing around the project, which would cut out or fence in part of the riverfront area. In my opinion, no work associated with the project should be allowed within the riverfront area. The 200-foot riverfront area should remain intact as a continuous unobstructed corridor. The notice of intent application also suggests a smaller amount of riverfront area as being impacted. In my opinion, what's presented is not really accurate, as there is a much larger area of riverfront area that would be fenced in, which constitutes an alteration. So the commission should get the whole square footage for the entire area of riverfront area to be fenced in. Also, proposing a project within the riverfront area requires that an alternatives analysis be submitted to look at other alternatives to the proposed project that would have less or no alteration of riverfront area. There was an alternatives analysis submitted as part of the notice of intent, but in my opinion, it's not adequate to address the proposed alterations. The alternatives analysis was very limited and needs to be more expansive in its scope. The alternatives analysis must consider other sites, in my opinion, for a solar project. The applicant is a solar developer, so the alternatives analysis must consider other potential sites for a project, as the applicant doesn't even own this site and can explore any potential sites that would have no impacts to riverfront area. So therefore, in my opinion, the alternatives analysis would need to be redone. The applicant is also requesting a waiver from the 50-foot no activity zone to wetlands, which is required under our bylaw. Again, I don't believe the commission should grant any waivers to the no activity zone. Proposing a solar project within a wetland would not meet the requirements of our wetland bylaw, in my opinion, and should not even be entertained. The wetland bylaw also has language relative to aesthetic impacts from projects. So while many projects are somewhat limited in scale, the scope of this project and other solar projects on cranberry bogs that would likely follow if this one was entertained would have a significant aesthetic impact to the town's wetlands and landscape while further fragmenting wetland and wildlife habitat. The town's engineer did review this project and concluded that the proposed stormwater structures met the required standards. We did get a DEP file number for the project, but at this time, I think there are issues that need to be more thoroughly addressed, and I think the commission should take time to evaluate the project, and other alternative sites should be considered, in my opinion, by the applicant.
Okay, Stacy, you want to bring up your screens, and then Dave gave you a lot to talk about.
Yes, yes, he did.
Writing and writing and writing.
Sarah told me this was going to be easy, everyone. Dave, I think you have to let me share.
Yeah, let me jump out of this. Hold on.
And mine's the same image that Dave has. It just has 2 red areas, which are the 2 updates from when you met with Sarah at the first hearing to discuss the project. So.
All right, you should be all set, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. All right, can everyone see my screen?
No.
Not yet.
It's come.
There we go.
Okay, great. So like I said, this is the same image. Let me just make it so I can see all of you now. And I'll start, oh my goodness, why? Well, you all are are very small on my screen, so we'll have to, here we go. Okay. So Sarah met with the commission at the first meeting, and I understand the project was discussed there in terms of how the tracking panels work, the solar project in general, SMART, all of that. We can certainly discuss it further and answer questions. And then subsequently, there was a site visit, I believe, with the commission and with Dave as well to take a look at the site. So the updates that I wanted to touch on first, and then I'll go through some of the items that Dave raised, is that since you met with Sarah, the project has received the Carver approvals from Conservation Commission and Planning Board, and it has also received Wareham Planning Board approval. The two red areas that you see here are the plan updates that I was mentioning. So over the course of the project, before submitting with the town, the array layout kind of was updated. So Dave had asked that we expand the mean annual high water delineation of the Weweantic to wrap around and encompass the full final layout. So that's been done. That's this red line here is the additional delineation, which was survey located and has been added to the plans. And then we also created an expanded cranberry bog restoration area. So at a 3-to-1 mitigation ratio for the impacts from the helical piers from the solar panel supports. So those are the two main updates in terms of the plan set. We have revised the plan set, but wanted to come to tonight's hearing to be able to receive the commission's feedback and incorporate other items that may come up tonight before we submit the supplemental package. Any questions on the updates before I jump into some of the items that Dave had raised?
Could I ask one quick question on the
Sure.
new wetland line area that was put in? Does that now throw buffer zone and or riverfront onto the site that was not shown on the previous plan?
Yes, I believe it will. Riverfront area, I'm nearly certain. Buffer zone, I believe as well, but I'm less positive about that.
Okay.
Yep, so we'll be updating the form with the resource area updated numbers as well when we submit the supplemental package. All right.
Very good.
So to run through, I guess, regarding the SMART program, as Adam noted, the megawatt limit is being updated. I think it's important for the commission to understand that the project is proposed as a dual use project. So it is a cranberry bog first and solar project combined. It has to continue to be farmed. It will have to comply with SMART. So I think it's related to the Conservation Commission jurisdiction, but not, SMART is a kind of separate program, but it's what's driving the project. Regarding the underground electric lines, I'll likely, Adam, pull you in on that, but maybe I'll run through all of kind of the ones that are in my court. Similarly, with the battery storage in the buffer zone to the cranberry bogs, Adam can speak to this more, but the battery storage containers are, self-contained, and they have provisions to prevent issue with regard to, potential impacts. So all of the proposed project work is limited to the actively farmed land. There's no new vegetative clearing. There's no new impacts. There's no impacts that are beyond how a cranberry bog is typically operated over the course of the year. So there's really no negative impacts to the wetland resource areas and buffer zones. The security fencing, my understanding is that that's actually a requirement of the zoning bylaw. And Adam, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I am less familiar with this project than Sarah, but I know we've been talking about it. And I believe it's something that the proponent would prefer not to have security fencing, but it is a requirement of the zoning bylaw. So there isn't a way around it. Adam, you look like you want to jump in.
No, I was just going to say that's correct. And we really all we want is to fence the western side of the project along North Carver Road. But the zoning bylaw requires us to fence the entirety of it.
Right. With regard to work in riverfront area, I think, Dave, your first comment was that there should be no work allowed in the riverfront area so that it's a continuous corridor. Again, I would reiterate that it is an actively farmed area where all of the work is occurring. It's a previously developed riverfront area. I'm not going to say that it provides no function, but certainly the proposed work is in keeping with the current nature of the Cranberry Bog operation.
I think in terms of that issue, I think once you fence it off, it becomes less of a viable corridor for wildlife and whatnot. So that's my main concern. The riverfront area, as far as I'm concerned, for the commission's benefit, should remain excluded and not fenced in as part of any project, not just this one, but any project.
So what happens is that we have a zoning bylaw which is in conflict with don't touch 200 feet of the river, correct?
Well, I think beyond the fencing, they're still proposing solar panels within the riverfront area. So I'm saying nothing should be within the riverfront area.
But
Solar
that
panels or
riverfront-
fencing.
That riverfront area already has bogs in it.
That's true, but it's
Okay.
still potentially available for wildlife to roam through, and that should remain unimpeded to the extent that it can be.
I would I would mention that we recently got, well, not recently, it was a long process, but we went through the entire MIPA process with a similar project, and which resulted in a superseding order from DEP in which they approved a dual use project within Riverfront in Bogs, same story. And so the DEP's opinion on that was that we had correctly done the calculations, and what we had proposed was in line with the wetlands, with the wetlands protection.
Right, but beyond that, we do have our own wetland bylaw, which gives the commission more latitude than what is found in the State Wetlands Act. So I doubt you had that case in the previous project that you're mentioning.
Well, I'm curious what you think, what wildlife would be impeded by the posts of the solar project in Bogs that is not impeded already in the Bogs.
Well, the bog is wide open. Anything could roam through there right now.
What roams through Bogs?
Deer, raccoons, any wildlife, coyotes, anything could roam through there right now.
So no protected species that you're concerned about.
I'm not so much focusing on any specific protected species, just wildlife in general, as which the riverfront area does provide wildlife habitat value for species in general, not just endangered species.
Yeah, and we can, Adam, perhaps what we should plan on doing, because I know you had a comment about the alternatives analysis, Dave, as well as pull together some narrative. But I think regarding the riverfront area, and certainly wildlife uses it, but the kind of performance standard is no significant adverse effect on the ability of the riverfront area to provide wildlife habitat. And I would argue that given the extremely routinely manipulated nature of the cranberry bogs, yes, wildlife does use it, but that this proposed project is not going to change it's not going to have a significant negative impact on the use of wildlife in this area, or wildlife using this area. So, maybe we can, if the commission wants, pull together a narrative outlining that so that you have it for the file. Similarly with the alternatives analysis, I guess I would say, I'm sure, Adam, we could talk and look at other sites or other, project areas, standard ground mounted in a forested area, what other land is for sale in Wareham. We can look at the regs. I'd need to refresh myself on what the scope of the alternatives analysis is limited to. But there's a reason, and Adam, I'm sure you can weigh in, that the project is proposed here. And I'm sure part of it has to do with interconnection availability, land availability, and the layout of the cranberry bogs, and the fact that it's wanting to do a dual use solar project as opposed to a standard ground mount project. So I'm not sure that it would be a meaningful exercise to undertake an additional analysis, but I think if it's something the commission desires, we could certainly pull together additional narrative for that.
Thank you.
Regarding the 50-foot waiver, I recognize and I'm aware that the commission, holds fast to that waiver typically. the 50-foot waiver has been granted in similar agricultural areas. And again, I think that's the key, is this 50-foot where the work is occurring in the buffer zone is actively farmed. It's sand track agricultural roads, it's ditches, cranberry bogs, areas that are manipulated nearly constantly throughout the year and not in a natural state. So I think that 50-foot buffer zone, the work that's being done, the panels in the bogs and the use of the roads is not going to affect that 50-foot no touch zone. So we would request that the commission consider granting that waiver, or, perhaps discuss it if there are specific questions that you have that you'd like us to address regarding it.
Can I just clarify one thing on that? We're talking about the 50-foot buffer to the bogs?
Right. So it's a little bit, this is a good question, Adam. It's a little bit of an interesting situation because the Wareham bylaw has a 50-foot buffer zone to cranberry bogs, as well as to natural wetlands, which requires a waiver for work therein. A waiver is not required for the work actually inside the cranberry bogs. So this is somewhat of a unique situation that I'm not sure the commission sees frequently. I think usually it's, limited to outside of wetlands or a wetland crossing.
So Stacy, everything within this 50-foot no touch zone has already been disturbed and becomes a already cleared or a road.
Correct. Yeah, everything within the 50-foot is already disturbed. The project is limited to the actively farmed area. There is a portion, no, actually, I believe that's outside of the 50-foot as well. This is the only spot where, in coordination with the peer reviewer, Mr. Rowley, we revised the access, which I think originally was going to come straight in, but for visual reasons and also because of the existing grades out here, it's a safer access point to come in and come down this way. There's an isolated wetland here, if you can see my cursor. But even this has very limited clearing associated with it. And the rest is entirely within the farm, and the 50-foot is entirely disturbed.
Thank you.
Mr. Pichette had noted that a project in a wetland shouldn't be entertained by the commission. And I think, again, this is a unique situation where it's a dual use cranberry bog solar project. So yes, the cranberry bogs are a jurisdictional wetland. The project is proposing an amount of work in the wetland with the pilings to support the solar panels. Mitigation replication by expanding an existing cranberry bog by 6,000 square feet at a ratio of 3:1 is proposed. That's this area here to mitigate that. And given the nature of the site, as we've discussed, the proposed work won't have a negative impact on the ability of that wetland to address the resource area performance standards. Regarding aesthetic impacts, this is a private property.
Just to comment on that. So just to clarify what we heard from Mr. Pichette is that he doesn't think the project should be done at all. Is that right?
That's correct.
I believe so, yeah.
So I think that personal opinion directly contradicts the guidance given by DEP. DEP issued guidance in late 2018 under which we've been pursuing the development of these dual use projects on cranberry bogs, stating that they believe that DEP's opinion or DEP's position is that dual use projects on wetland cranberry bogs does not adversely impact the ability of those resources to contribute to the Wetlands Protection Act. Stacy, maybe you can say it a bit more, more nimbly than that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good summary. I don't actually really have much to add, Adam. I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is certainly something that I have been involved in discussions with, if we're talking DEP, for several years at this point, in terms of when the SMART program came out and what that meant for cranberry bogs and cranberry bog farmers and how that comports with the Mass Wetlands Protection Act. This isn't the first, project that has been proposed in various communities. It's something, that can be done while still allowing the continued farming use and resulting in renewable energy without the tree clearing.
Yeah, just to highlight on that issue again, as I mentioned before, it doesn't surprise me that DEP's viewpoint is whatever it is. Again, that's why towns have their own bylaws, because towns want to have greater restrictions in terms of what projects can go on in wetlands versus what DEP would allow, because DEP tends to allow lots of different things that towns may not agree with. So again, the fact that the town has its own wetland bylaw, there are other standards to consider and latitude that the commission has, whether or not they allow something or not, regardless of what DEP's opinion is. So I just wanted to reiterate that point.
Yep, understood completely. So, but with regard to vegetated wetland, is there a particular performance standard that you feel the project is not meeting? In the local bylaw I'm speaking to.
Yes, I think first of all, we have the 50-foot no activity zone. Secondly, we have the ability to consider impacts to different interests that the town can look at in a different way or more strictly than under the Wetlands Protection Act. So I think, that's a discussion that the commission's going to have to evaluate and decide how they want to regard such things. But again, just want to make it clear to the commission that you don't have to just go along with DEP's guidelines as to what they would or wouldn't allow under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Well, Mr. Pichette, so you're essentially suggesting that you want to kill the project. So I'm wondering if you could provide more insight on what performance standards you think we are not meeting in detail.
Can we hold off and have Mr. Bichette respond to you in writing on that?
That's fine.
Because I'd be interested to have someone from planning come talk to about why and how this project was approved by planning, because I've not been attending those meetings. I would love to have someone from
Sandy?
planning say why.
That approval was subject to change once formally reviewed by the Conservation Committee.
So it really hasn't been approved.
Correct. It was back in January 25th. It states that it needs to be formally reviewed by the Conservation Commission. Granted, subject to change once it was formally reviewed.
I guess I didn't hear that one.
So the permit, and Adam, correct me, because I know I might be behind the 8 ball on this coming in after Sarah, but the permit was issued, but one of the conditions was subject to obviously Conservation Commission review being needed, or?
No,
Notice of intent was not submitted to the conservation for this project. Therefore, the plans currently before the planning board may be changed subject to change once the project is formally reviewed by the Conservation Commission.
Yes, and that's always the case, I think, in Wareham and every municipality, that the plans can change depending on conservation input or planning input.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome.
Okay. The next topic, please.
Aesthetic impacts, I think, was the last item that Dave had mentioned. And, again, this is a privately held property. We did coordinate with the peer reviewer during the planning board process to address visual concerns, which resulted in the change to the site access point. Dave had mentioned, this project, I think this project addresses aesthetic concerns. What it means for future projects, the commission is reviewing this project. Future projects would be subject to the commission's review in terms of aesthetic impacts under their bylaw as well. But I think future projects shouldn't have a sway in how the commission reviews whether this project has aesthetic impacts.
Okay. I think that covers your topics. Dave, if I can come back and before I ask the commission's questions, there were 3 items left brought on by the public at the last meeting. Was there not read my handwriting. Study of the help me.
Hydrologic?
Yes. Are we going to require that, or is that was a recommendation? Don't need it?
Who are you asking?
I guess I'm asking. Adam, you, somebody, I mean, it was
Cindy,
requested.
what are they hoping to discover with a hydrologic study?
Nothing was stated other than we should do a study. I don't know why.
Because of water drainage? Is it because of keeping the river in good shape? Why?
I don't know. It just came in from the public. I had a note and there was no discussion that other than we should do it. And I don't know. So unless there is a requirement why do we need to do it? What would a study show us? Dave, can you answer that? What would a study show us?
I mean, a hydrologic study for any project simply looks at how groundwater flows and surface water flows over a particular site based on what current conditions are and what they might be once the project is completed.
Okay, the current conditions are cranberry bogs.
And the river.
And the river.
And the river.
So the question is, what changes would occur if these solar panels were installed? Is that the question? How would that change the water flow, water table? All right.
And I think one thing, Sandy, you noted it in terms of that the property is cranberry bogs, but so commensurate with that is the manipulation of the water across the site as part of the farming practices. So I'm not sure how informative a hydrogeo study would be, but Adam, I don't know if you have thoughts.
Okay. Another question was raised is whether or not, do we have enough information as to whether or not the cranberries will grow with a reduced amount of sunlight?
Question.
We do have.
we know?
Yeah, we do have some preliminary information on that from a pilot study that was done on Bogs, just about a half mile or a mile north of here. It was a preliminary study, so I think the findings can't be considered definitive, but the findings were positive. There was a slight reduction in yield, but it was nothing that would prevent the continued agricultural operation of the site. And there's actually some longer term studies that will be starting in the spring of next year that will provide kind of a more conclusive look at it. But all the indications we have so far is that the cranberries will continue to grow and produce a viable yield.
And that would be at the farmer's risk, since we don't have a full year study of more than a couple small preliminary studies. So it could be a risk for the farmer that he could lose his vines.
Adam, do you have, I know you say it's a small number, but do you actually have those numbers percentage-wise of what the less amount of yield was in that study?
Yes, there is. I'd have to look back at it just to make sure I don't say the wrong numbers, but
that would be great.
Study. And I don't think there's any risk of the vines dying. We know that the vines will do fine and that the cranberries will grow. It's just a question of what the actual barrels per acre will be.
Okay. All right. And the last note we had from the last public hearing was, is there anything regarding the runoff of the panels in the way of contamination of the water?
And I think we addressed that. We sent around a report that was produced by DEP and DOER it was a frequently asked questions about large-scale solar project report that discusses, concerns that are raised frequently about toxic substances. And I believe Sarah circulated that to the commission.
I'm not sure if that was circulated, Adam, but I know she mentioned that if desired, we can include it in the supplemental information packet as well when we submit the revised plans.
That would be great. I'm going to ask the commissions if they have any questions. Carol?
How much larger in megawatts is this project than what is currently allowed? Currently allowed is 2 megawatts?
Two, it's much larger.
Well, what's currently allowed is 2 megawatts AC, and there is no limit on the amount of DC. So we are proposing 3 megawatts AC instead of 2 megawatts AC because that's what the regulations are. It looks like the regulations will be updated to allow for.
When do you expect that update?
I honestly would have expected it to be out by now, but I think so we can still build the same amount of megawatts DC with a 2 megawatt AC limit. So I think what changes is if that regulation does not go through, the project would be changed would remain the same size in terms of megawatts DC, but would be reduced to 2 megawatts AC.
Does that change any of the noise that the fact that you're changing that? Does that change anything else with the project?
It would reduce the amount of inverters. It would reduce their 1 megawatt inverters, so it would reduce the inverters by 1.
Hey, Carol, any other question?
No.
Kwame?
Yes, the south side of the map depicts a dirt road to get entrance to the property in the red dots.
Oh.
Yep, the south side, yep. In the red dots, is that going to be the extent of the new fence?
No, so the red is the updated wetland delineation. It's only in red to reflect that it's something new since the commission saw this plan last. The fence limit is, I believe, this black line here, which follows the edge of the active farm area.
Okay, I'm a little colorblind, sorry. And the most of the wetlands, I don't know, David, if you can answer this, most of the wetlands exist in Carver or more so with Wareham?
Well, the majority of the project is in Wareham, and Stacy, you can just point out the town line. That line is the line between the two towns right there.
Yes.
So this is Carver. And this is Wareham.
Yes. And Carver was okay with this?
Yes.
Okay, no, that's all
Wow.
the questions.
Does it look like that fence goes right into the river in the Carver side?
Yep.
Right there, there.
Right here.
Huh. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, it's not in the river. This is the edge of the farmed area. I'm guessing, although I shouldn't speak because I don't know. I don't know if there's an inlet here from the river to feed the farm or what's going on there. But yeah, the fence is certainly closer to the open water there, but within the farm.
Okay. Kwame, anything else?
No, thanks. Thank you.
Michael?
Just refresh my memory again. You said the Massachusetts SMART program, does this only apply to, say, Cranberry Bogs, or is this farmland in general?
So the solar program in Massachusetts applies to all sorts of solar projects. And then there's kind of the dual use provisions, and Adam, correct me if I'm misstating anything, but the dual use provisions under SMART, which are for farming and farming and solar. So some sort of agricultural use underneath the solar array.
Yeah, it can be, it's not limited to any particular type of agriculture, as long as it's deemed to be a compatible use, which we went through a lot of work with the UMass Cranberry Extension and MDAR and DOER to have that determination made for cranberries.
And again, there's been very few projects like this in the state, although there are proposals like this in the state. Is that my understanding? That question makes sense.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely it's a limited number right now because it's a relatively new concept, but there are two projects under this, basically this exact same design and concept on wetland cranberry bogs under construction right now in Carver, just a mile or so up the road.
So Carver has one under construction right now.
We have two.
Projects under construction. Yeah.
So they have one under construction and then this one's proposed on their land. Interesting. All right, thank you.
Hey, Alyssa,
None.
Ron,
I mean, I don't think I have any at the moment. I think that, I guess one of the things that I see is, before I make any determinations on my side, I'd like to see, regulation, if it's going to change, I'd like to see it change before I would put my vote into any approvals or disapprovals. It's just one thing, but other than that, right now, I think I'm just going to kind of continue to read through the issues and then go from there.
when you say regulations, are you talking about the?
I'm talking
smart
about
program?
I'm
The
talking
smart-
about the program and the megawatt allowance that is currently passed and what is proposed to pass, which we know proposals don't always get where they need to be. So I'm not going to put my hat on something without actually seeing it happen first.
Unless we implement based on the current SMART program, not the
Correct.
proposed modification. Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
It would have to be a change.
And can I just clarify one item, and Adam, to clarify, so if the SMART increase to 3 megawatts did not pass, so it stayed the current 2 megawatts, that would change the number of inverters, so it might change the size or footprint of one or more of the equipment areas, but would the solar panel footprint be the same? Would the project footprint be the same, I guess is what I'm driving at.
Yes, the project footprint would be the same.
So in terms of Conservation Commission jurisdiction, looking at the extent of the proposed work, that would not change regardless of whether it's a 2 megawatt limit or a 3 megawatt limit. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and that's correct. And just a little bit more background, the difference between the AC limit and the DC limit is that the AC limit is the amount of power that can be placed onto the grid or injected into the grid at any one time. And the DC limit is the amount of solar or the amount of electricity that's actually produced by the solar panels. And what gives us the flexibility with the AC limit to move that up and down is that we have the battery storage incorporated into this project. And the battery storage stores the solar electricity when it's produced, and then dispatches it later to provide a more stable and kind of a more firm output profile for the project.
Okay, Ron, anything else?
Not right now, no.
Denise, you're certainly on top of planning.
Well,
I appreciate that.
went and I checked with my planning board member.
I wonder how. I
Yeah.
know, we call that pillow talk.
Yeah, I am. There's a lot of concerns that have been brought up. I think I'd like to review the notes and stuff that I've taken on this whole thing. And I agree with Ron. I think I need some time to take a look at everything and the concerns that have been brought up.
Okay. And I've certainly been very vocal on my questions. Is there anybody on the line that would like to comment on this project? Please raise your hand so Dave can hook you in.
Stacy, could you stop the share for a bit so I can see everybody's, there we go. Thank you. We do have Nancy and Kathy that have a question or comment.
Yes. Okay, Nancy, Kathy.
Okay, first, I'll go first. Kathy Pappalardo, West Wareham. Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question or just a point of information. Battery storage. Just so everyone's aware, battery storage is not in our bylaw. Our bylaw allows for generation. It does not say anything about battery storage? Second question, the batteries themselves, what are they made out of? Last I knew it was lithium, which is extremely toxic. And I know they do not live forever. So a question for consideration is, what is their lifespan? And again, they're not in our bylaw. That's all I had. If anybody has any answers. I didn't see what the batteries are made out of or what their life expectancy is.
Adam, you want to take that? Can you take that?
Sure. Yeah, the batteries are lithium ion batteries, which is different than pure lithium. Lithium ion is the same battery that's in all of our cell phones and laptop computers and it's just ubiquitous throughout our lives today. And so we've done a lot of we've looked into a lot of things regarding the safety of lithium ion batteries. And I think that the main thing that you have to be careful about is just ensuring that all of the necessary fire protection systems are in place. And that is a requirement under the National Fire Code as well as the Massachusetts Fire Code. So everything we've proposed are up to speed with all of those regulations. And there's the lithium ion batteries are actually contained within a steel shipping container that has a 6-inch lip around the bottom of it, so that nothing can escape the storage container itself if there was to be a fire event. But we do have a lot of literature about fire safety and lithium ion, and it's something that we've worked closely with fire departments in various towns on. So we can definitely provide more information on that.
You said something about a 6-inch lip?
Right. So the bottom of the container, instead of the door to the container going all the way to the ground, there's essentially 6 inches around the bottom of the container that is designed to contain any liquid or any fire suppressant that might be released in the event of a fire. So that it
And what is that made? What material is that made of?
The fire suppressant.
The lip.
Oh, it's just part of the steel container. So the steel container is designed so that it doesn't have any openings below 6 inches.
Okay. So it won't rust out on us.
No. They're ISO weather rated steel containers meant to last at least 50 years.
Kathy, anything else?
No, but Nancy has a question. Thank you.
She was going to be next. Nancy.
Thank you very much. Nancy McHale. I had another question, a bunch of questions for Adam regarding maintenance on these assorted components that are in these systems. How are they? I can understand if a panel fails within a land area and you can go back in and replace it. Will they do the same things over the bogs? And what now those pieces and parts that are have broken off or have been damaged by wind, et cetera, because we're getting tropical storm force winds up here tomorrow. How will those be handled, and how do you plan on keeping the pilings that these things are sitting on from sinking into which is a wetland bog? Again, it's not an upland bog that has some sort of really strong base underneath it. And I understand that things like the inverters and the AC systems and the fire protection systems
all have a life that is anywhere from 5 to 8 years. So are those swapped out at that point in time? How do you ensure that they're still viable and functional for your 20-year life of the project? And a lot of these projects seem to get sold to another party afterward. And who is responsible for those maintenances as this goes forward?
Adam, do you want to take one at a time? That was a lot thrown.
Sure. So I will start with, Stacy just texted me. She lost power from those tropical forest winds. So she's trying to join back on. So in regards to operations and maintenance, yes, the plan for maintaining the systems is, for the most part, the same as it would be for a normal project, but meaning that if a panel is damaged, the panel will be replaced. If there's an inverter that needs to be fixed, the inverter will be fixed like it normally is. But I think what's different about this project is that that's all done in coordination and working with the farming requirements that are part of the site. And so rather than driving a pickup truck in between the panel rows to fix a panel, somebody will park the pickup truck on the bog road and walk out with a ladder to replace a solar panel. So there's kind of small differences like that that are required in order to keep with the agricultural component of the project and also maintain or protect the cranberry vines to the greatest extent possible. And it looks like Ian Ward is also on tonight, as well as Brett Meredith, the landowner and cranberry grower. And this is something that we've spent a lot of time working with Ian as a consultant and Brett as the cranberry grower to make sure that we have a viable plan for being able to run a successful dual use project. And so, Ian and Brett can speak to more of those details too, if you have other questions on that. But that, in regards to O&M, that essentially is the plan is to perform maintenance like it would normally be done, but just while taking into account the special requirements of the active farming going on at the site. And in regards to, I believe you mentioned the lifespan of the equipment. I'm not sure what lifespan you're speaking about, being 5 to 8 years. The equipment that we're using has a much longer lifespan than that. The solar panels are warranted for 25 years. The inverters have warranties for at least 15 years.
I think she was referring to the fire suppression equipment.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the fire suppression equipment having a short lifespan. I think you certainly need to do periodic safety checks to make sure that the fire suppression material is full and the fire suppression system is working. But aside from ensuring that the fire suppression material is in adequate supply, I'm not sure what else would kind of run out or have a short lifespan within the fire suppression system.
One of the questions that is a follow-up to that is, what information has the Wareham Fire Department and the Onset Fire Department, what training have they had in fighting lithium-ion batteries problems? I mean, you can read in the newspapers about the horrific explosion, catastrophic
catastrophic event that happened in Morris, Illinois, where they ended up having to dump dry cement on the batteries that were burning in order to put it out, because it was right next to the river. So this being on a river is somewhat problematic to me as someone who lives near the Weweantic and who kayaks in it and who has a well not far from the Weweantic. So I'm just asking those questions. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, what was the specific question?
About the training and what would the Wareham Fire Department do should there be a catastrophic event with one of these batteries?
Yeah, so I know Sarah has been in touch with the Wareham Fire Department, and I can follow up with her to clarify what the training plan is specifically. We have, with other fire departments, like the Plimpton and Kingston fire departments and the Carver fire departments, we've agreed to fund training for the fire department personnel in regards to battery storage systems in particular. And I know that it's with the growing prevalence of lithium-ion battery storage throughout the country and the world, that fire departments it's becoming much more of a mainstream topic that they're being brought up to speed on. But I think it's a great question about what Wareham's specific training plans are, and I will I'll confer with Sarah about that when she's back, and we can respond with further information on that.
Thank you. That was a great question, especially anybody owns a Tesla. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment on this project?
I had several with hands up, and I see everyone, but Tricia Wirtz was the next one, and we'll get to everybody who's got their hand up, but Tricia was next up.
Thanks, David. Nancy covered some of what I was interested in, and that has to do with the battery issue, and especially the battery issue by the river. Not only has there been the Illinois explosion, there's been problems with lithium battery fires in Arizona and California having to do with solar projects. And the big thing to know is you can't put the fire out, which is why they had to dump dry cement on it. So I am concerned about that being near the Weweantic. I live near the Weweantic. The Weweantic courses through a large part of Wareham. So that's a comment. My second issue is a question. And I want to confirm how high these panels are going to be off the ground. I've heard 6 feet, I've heard 10 feet. What, Adam or Stacy, is the height on these proposed on this particular field?
Yeah, they're a minimum of 10 feet above the bog level when the panels are in horizontal position. And so that the panels articulate.
Right.
So when they're flat, they're 10 feet above the ground, and when they're at their maximum tilt, the highest edge of the panel is a little under 13 feet above the height of the bog.
And the lowest level?
A little above 7 feet.
Okay.
So, and I'm asking about that level for a couple of reasons. One is ability for wildlife to pass under and around it. But secondly, these panels, these moving panels generate a reasonable amount of noise. When you elevate these panels, that noise is gonna just expand and go across a huge space. It's basically noise pollution. And I'd like your comment on that.
Yeah, the panels themselves don't actually generate any noise. The inverter and the transformer generate noise, but those are not elevated.
And so still, what is the noise generation level that you're looking at for this particular site?
Given the distance from the inverter and transformer to the nearest home, there's not going to be any amount of noise generated that would violate any the DEP noise pollution guidelines or requirements.
And what is the noise generation level?
Of the inverter?
Yes.
Well, at the inverter itself, it's roughly 60 decibels. But
Okay.
then you have to,
Okay.
that number doesn't really matter. What matters is the decibel level at the nearest receptor that would.
Okay, I'm going to, and that nothing to do with conservation, so please keep your questions to what this commission has authority over.
No, thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Adam. That's it.
Okay, next, please.
Annie Hayes was next up. We're not hearing you, Annie.
Maybe she lost power. If I could respond just quickly about the battery fire that was mentioned in Illinois. I hadn't heard about that. I just looked it up online, and it looks like it was actually a factory, not a battery storage system attached to a solar project. So it was a factory that caught on fire is what happened in Illinois. And I'm not sure what, looks like it just happened yesterday or the day before. So I don't know any of the details about that, but I just wanted to clarify it wasn't what was mentioned is not what is being proposed at this project.
So is Annie online?
Annie's online. You're muted now, Annie. If you unmute, see what happens. But before we couldn't hear you. Yeah, it sounds like your mic's not working out here because we can't hear you. Well, she's trying to get that straight. The next person was Kathleen Melker.
Hey, Kathleen, your question?
Hi. I guess it's not conservation related. I'm glad Mr. Shed is get this because Wareham, we have 2 solar fields. And my question had been, where are the solar panels made and who are they assembled by?
And I'm going to ask you to keep this to a conservation's question.
No,
Kathleen, you're cutting out as well. I think your audio's got an issue. I don't know if any others are being affected by storms or
understand. So,
what.
again, I just want to. Yeah, it's been rumbling around here. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I see Nancy and Kathy with their hands still raised. Was that from previously, or do you have another question?
This is Nancy. That was just to respond to Adam. That was batteries that were stored in a warehouse that were going to be installed in solar projects similar, of large solar arrays. So they were sitting in the warehouse waiting to be installed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? We're asking for a report, right, Dave? I lost track of what it was called.
I recommended an alternatives analysis that was wider in scope than what was submitted.
Okay, and I think Stacy made a comment that she would work on that.
Yes. Yeah. And I am back. Sorry, I lost power and had to drive down the street. And I think the other aspect that we had talked about potentially submitting additional information on, but that might require some direction from Dave, is if there are particular local performance standards that he didn't feel were adequately addressed and should have supplemental information submitted.
And he was going to provide a report on that and share.
Yes.
Okay. I'm running out of space on my paper to make notes. Anything else? If not, I'll ask for.
One last quick thing. Annie did submit a chat where she said she had asked or wanted to ask about leaching of the panels, and commented about a study that she had seen on that. So again, maybe Adam, you could comment on the issue of whether or not these panels may or may not leach material over time.
Sure. The panels are inert and do not contain toxic material. So these panels are crystalline silicon panels, meaning they're made out of silicon, which is sand essentially, and glass and an aluminum frame. And the report that I mentioned, FAQ report, FAQ document from DEP and DOER, talks about this, and we'll be submitting that as well.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's nothing else, I will ask, do you think we can get Stacy the report and Dave the report before our 21st meeting of July?
So we can certainly should be able to address the materials before July 21st. And I think that would be our preference if we could, address the two items, riverfront area alternatives analysis, and then responding to Dave's input, to submit something ahead, or at least be prepared to discuss it at the July 21st meeting. But I don't know what your timing is, Dave.
I think that should be fine for additional information. I also, though, probably am going to want to see this new wetland line that's been flagged, because we did not review that previously. This was something that was done after our initial meeting. So if that's something now where we are going to have a buffer zone into the project from that new wetland line and or riverfront area, then I would want to review those wetland flags as well.
Okay, we have a request from Wendy to ask a question.
Hi, yes, thank you. Sorry, I didn't know how to raise my hand on the Zoom meeting. So, and I don't know that this is part of conservation. However, I'm not sure that there is a board that would address this. This is our food supply, and these panels are glass and sand. What if these panels break and go into the food supply? I mean, has the Food and Drug evaluated this type of agriculture? And I really don't want my children to be eating cran raisins and eating glass. So I guess it's for Stacy or Adam. Has that been even evaluated at any level?
I would expect that what's been covered under the SMART program.
Yeah, I think, Ian Ward is probably the best person to respond to that. Ian is very familiar with all of the strict regulations and all of the testing that happens with food products and cranberries in particular.
Sure.
But have they studied glass breaking into the food?
Can you wait, Wendy, let him respond to the question?
Yep.
So
Sure.
Wendy, that is a good question. We routinely are trained, given training by the cranberry handlers on a every twice a year basis during the growing season, particularly. Glass is an issue. Those of us that have cranberry bogs on roads with glass bottles being thrown out onto them and being mowed over, we're given pretty strict instructions on how to prevent issues. And at the handling level, whether it be any of the handlers have mechanisms with which to take that out of the food system. So from a perspective of litter is a bigger problem than these panels will be. And that's currently the way it is. And we work with that on a regular basis.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Thank
I
you.
would like to take a motion to continue until July 21st.
So moved.
All in favor, Carol,
Yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Elissa, Ron, Sandy.
Yes.
July 21st, next hearing. Thank you, everybody. The next
Thank you.
continued hearing is Wareham MA3 LLC, Joseph Shahanigan. They have requested a continuance until July 21st. Is there anybody online that would like to comment on this? But my recommendation is that you wait until the proponent is here to hear your comments. Can I get a motion to continue until 7:21?
Motion to continue.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, Carol,
Yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Elissa,
Yes.
Ron, Sandy,
Yes.
we're continued. Okay, enforcement orders.
I had some of these on the list from previous meetings in case there were some updates. So the first one still requires some field review before we can further discuss that, so I would skip that one. The next one for Lawrence Pink, there still has not been any response from this property owner. Sandy, I don't know if we need to address this with town council as well as we've done with some other ones. That would be my suggestion. So I don't have any further information on that one unless there's any questions that you and or the commission has.
Let's give it one more shot. I mean, there is an alternative, is to send out a constable.
Yes,
Can you make that happen?
yes.
Because they're not responding to our. Have we sent it out registered mail
Yes,
and no response?
correct.
And I think we should bring in a constable to deliver it in hand.
Okay.
Okay,
The next one is Robert and Janine Perry at 4 Wareham Lakeshore Drive. That's a site where we had some work that was done in the buffer zone regarding patio work, some landscaping, things of that nature. We had continued this because some members wanted to go by and take a look at that. And the owners were going to see if they had any additional information regarding a patio that was fairly close to the pond that was put in. Definitely within the 30-foot no activity zone. I'm not sure, I don't see them on the meeting here. But did any members go by there and take a look?
I did not.
I
Can we
wasn't on the
put-
last meeting, so I didn't know what was going on with that.
Dave, put it for the next meeting, please.
Okay, will do. The next one is Sandra Lopes. This is at 3 C Street. This was a project that involved, again, a patio being built right up to the edge of the seawall at this site, which was previously grass, which again had no review or approval from the commission. The owner was on the last time, and we did discuss it. And again, members were going to go give it a look. My suggestion was that this is not a project that we would have approved had it been put in front of us. So I don't see any other alternative other than my recommendation has to be that it shouldn't be allowed to stay there. So let's see what the commission's thoughts are, if anybody's been by there to take a look. And I would also ask if the owner is on the line or a representative. I don't see their name, but I just figured I'd ask.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, Sandra Lopes.
Okay, so we do have Ms. Lopes on the line here.
Yep. I did it. Okay. Did anybody get to go by and look or?
Well, I did. Here's a picture.
I saw it. Okay, so there's the picture. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I have some
honestly,
photos, too.
30 feet back from that stone wall would not have been permitted.
Yes.
What was it?
Yes, I know.
What was the material before you paved it over or
It was
cemented
grass.
Grass.
Yeah, it's not cemented, it's pavers.
Pavers.
Yeah.
Well,
I know it shouldn't have been done and I did it out of ignorance and that's not really an excuse, but it's there now and to take it out would just be, I mean, I was thinking about it. It's just going to be so much more construction to try to get that out of there now. I mean, I'm just, is there anything else that we could do that?
Well, we have to be very concerned because I believe there's somebody else on another part of a wetland that put in their, that paved or covered up next to their seawall.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody else was allowed to do it.
Yeah, no, I understand the issue, but I'm just, at this point, like I said, it's done. And to try to get somebody in there to undo it would be a lot of construction. And, I'm thinking that.
What would you recommend?
Excuse me?
What would you recommend?
Well, I mean, if I was to pay some sort of a fine or something, I mean, I understand that I did something out of ignorance, but at this point to undo it, it's just going to be more of what I shouldn't have done to begin with. And it's
Well, so here's my take on this, and I think everybody's going to know where I go with this. Is you understand that you shouldn't have done it. The quote unquote crime has been committed, but there still has to be some, rectification of the issue, which is, I understand what you're saying, more construction, but, it's not the first time we've had to have somebody remove something that was put there, without approval and, to Dave's point, would never be approved. But there is also the fining element to it on top of the removal of it, which is what we've done in the past. So just so you understand, that's kind of, we preach consistency on the board, and by saying let's try to make an exception isn't really something that we do, and I don't think would get support of anybody on the board. I understand where you're coming from with not understanding and knowing, but that doesn't change the fact that it still needs to be changed.
So what would you recommend? What I'm hearing is that these pavers be removed and the site returned to what it was prior to the construction,
Correct.
plus a $300 fine.
That's correct.
Any other comment from the board? Carol?
No.
Kwame?
No comment.
Michael?
I visited the site and I agree with Ron.
Lissa? Denise? Well, we've done someone make a motion.
I make a motion that the site needs to be restored to previous conditions, which to the offender was grass at the time. So I think it needs to go back to the grass, and also the issuance of a $300 fine for unapproved work.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, Carol?
Yes.
Kwame?
Yes.
Michael? Alyssa?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Sandy? Yes. And a time frame to make that happen?
6 months.
6 months. I think 6 months is kind of a long time
All right,
to pull up some pavers. I would say 90 days.
No, end of October. You can't get anybody to do any work for you right now.
That's the thing, is like, I don't know how I'm even gonna find anybody that would pull them up.
So you're going to give her the summer?
Yes.
Okay, so I've heard 6 months, I've heard 90 days. Can I hear from the rest of you? Carol,
I agree with the 6 months because of how hard it is to get contractors. They're all so freaking busy right now.
Kwame,
I say 6 months or longer.
But
Michael,
the thing with,
I'm sorry, Ron, go ahead.
so the thing I have with 6 months is 6 months puts us into winter and potential snow, which would then push it to be a longer term time. So I think that if 90 days is too short, I say by, the end of September, maybe middle of October, the latest. So that way it's done before we get into any type of inclement weather.
so by the end of October.
I can agree on that.
Oktoberfest sounds good to me.
So by the end of October.
Now, is
Okay.
this basically, once you've made your decision, I have no recourse?
Mr.
Correct.
Bichette,
That's the decision of the commission. So this is a violation. If you choose not to respond to the violation, then there could be other legal action taken by the town to get compliance, which could include additional fines and so forth. So I don't know what else to tell you on that. That's just the board's decision based on what's occurred and what the regulations require.
I just feel like the regulation should include when you purchase a house near the water, if there's certain recommendations you have to go by that, like when you're given all these forms to sign, that you should have some knowledge instead of leaving people just to, do something and then find out after that they shouldn't have done it.
I guess
I mean, I
that's,
certainly would have never done something like that if I thought I wasn't supposed to.
then I would strongly recommend you talk to your agent who you purchased it from. To me, the real estate agent has a responsibility to let you know of restrictions.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, nobody said anything to me. The contractor, the real estate agent, and now I'm just left in the lurch to try to figure it out.
Yeah, the contractor wants the money.
Yeah, I know, I understand that, but
So
I certainly
did you
wasn't
have
trying to hide
did-
it.
so you had a contractor install
Yes.
that patio for you?
Yeah.
Do you know who was the contractor?
Let me see if I have his name on my phone. I don't
I
remember.
guess we want a $300 fine for him too, don't we?
Absolutely. If she didn't do it herself, she shouldn't be the only one to hold the boat on this. If you have a contractor, he should be fined also.
Yeah, I can send you his name. But like I said, I just feel like I've been, I'm a very law-abiding citizen. Like, I don't do things like you could check my traffic. I'm just a law-abiding person. I would not go ahead and do something if I thought I wasn't supposed to. I just feel like I've never lived near the water, and the real estate agent, the town, like somebody should have given me some regulations to go by. And trying to find somebody at this point to undo this, I mean, like you said, everybody's busy. I couldn't even get anybody to come and give me estimates.
That's why we're giving you to the end of October.
Well, that's really
Oh,
mine.
We will ask, Sandra will provide the name of the contractor, so I will take a motion to find the contractor when identified, $300 for doing the work in a that had not been permitted. I need
A motion to find the contractor $300 for work not approved by the commission.
Yes, that's the motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in
I
favor.
appreciate that,
Carol,
you're gonna
Kwame,
try to go after him too,
Michael,
but that's not
Elissa,
helping me.
Yep.
Ron,
Yes.
Sandy. So when we identify the contractor, we will also issue a fine to that entity. Thank you. Okay. Next one.
The next one is Mario and Alice Signori at 91 Edgewater Drive. And there's a couple of issues that were going on at this particular site. So this is a site where we had approved a septic system upgrade. We did issue an order of conditions for that at this particular site. So that was an approved project. What occurred is that the contractor went in and started doing the work without notifying me that the work was going to start, so I could inspect the hay bales and so forth and make sure everything was in order. So some work was done there, which involved some tree cutting work that was outside the limit of work and the stockpiling of some brush and so forth outside the limit of work at this site. So I met with the owners, we addressed it, and I made it clear that the erosion control they had in place was not adequate, and that the brush and everything that was piled up outside the limit of work had to be removed. So they did sort of get that squared away. The only issue I had was, as I said, they did do some tree cutting, which was beyond the limit of work, which should not have occurred until someone spoke to us about it to see if it was acceptable. So that was one issue. The other issue is that there was an existing dock at this site. If you recall, the owners had come in not long ago and requested to construct a new pier at this site. And we had continued this hearing so that way we could get an eelgrass study, because at the time the project was submitted was not during the suitable time to do an eelgrass study. So therefore, we had continued their notice of intent for the dock. In the meantime, the existing old dock that was there, the applicant decided to rebuild that, okay, with no permits or approvals. And so I went back down there to take a second look, because at the first time I went to deal with the septic system issue, the dock had not been touched. But when I went back, I had noticed that the dock work had been started to rebuild that. And so again, I notified the owner. We spoke about that issue, and I made it clear that obviously that was not something that should have been going on. And so they've ceased and desisted from that. So that's why this is on our agenda tonight, for the owner to discuss that. The owner is here on the call, so I will let the owner speak to some of this issue.
Thank you.
I am not Mario, I'm Alice. First,
Okay.
I so sincerely apologize to all of you. I know that you guys do a great job, and it was not ever our intention to go against conservation. As far as the tree, we hired a man. That was a branch. There was always branches falling off and everything. One overhung the house and the deck. So I wanted the branch cut. So we hired a gentleman that was referred to us, who climbed up the tree and he cut the branch. And he said, you know, some of these branches are really bad. And he started cutting more and more. And it was like, the word I heard was doty. I don't know what that means. Spongy wood. We ended up cutting the tree. It ended up breaking 2 other trees, which we ended up cutting down to the ground. I, number one, never knew you had to have permission to cut a tree. Number 2, we're old school. I mean, you have to understand, we're in our 70s, and it's like when you get a ticket for being the second one at a stop sign and going forward, because that's the way you learn to get your license, and laws change. We don't know that the laws change. And when it came to the dock, I have to tell you, the story is ridiculous. My husband needed to change the boards on top, and they're all splintery. This is the part that was fixed to the ground, not the part that floats. So he went to the lumberyard and he was telling him what he wanted to do. And the man said, well, you know, you can't use pressure treated. You have to use this new specially approved marine grade pressure treated. So my husband thinking, well, let me pull out the old pressure treated 4x4s and put new ones in. And that's where everything started to go very badly. And poor David is the one who had to keep coming. And I cannot imagine how uncomfortable it must be to keep going back and going back and going back to the idiot Signoris. And he was great about it. And I finally said to him, so what are we allowed to do without a permit? And basically, he educated me. There isn't anything we can do without checking with conservation or building. And I apologize. It's just, we're old. We just, it's all new things to us. We just, and I am so sorry. We were not intending to pull anything over people's eyes or do anything, under the table. Just idiocy. And I am so very sorry. I know we have penalties. We have made application for the permanent dock. I don't know if you have some pictures of what's in the backyard right now. It's a skeletal frame that is the access to get onto the floating parts. With the understanding that we have application for permanent, which will require this being ripped out and built new. If there's some way that just to get through the summer, if we could put anything over this skeletal frame, even if we make like a form that we lay on top of it, just so that people can walk on it to get to the dock without having to swim out and climb on, it would be very appreciative. If not, I do understand, but please understand, this was never, ever intended to fly in front of or before or insult or ignore. It was pure idiocy. And without David's patience explaining that there's nothing we can do without permission, I don't even want to tell you the plans I had, because now I know that they're impossible. We haven't even gotten to the part where I have to find out about how we plant going forward. I don't know, poor David's patience can hold up for explaining that part to me, but we have a long way to go here. And I do not want to be on the wrong side of you or anybody else in the town. So please accept my apologies. And the rest of that is in way of explanation. I cannot tell you how sorry I am. So that's.
Thank you. So right now it's not usable. Your outer dock is, you can't reach it unless you wade in or swim to it.
That is correct. And we would not have pulled out the parts that were there, except in this innocent conversation. I mean, he wasn't telling us how to do it. It was a casual conversation. He said, well, you can't use, the old pressure treated, it has to be special. So we ordered it and waited like 3 or 4 weeks for it. And the pieces he put in are like, when you take one out, one went back in. So the old configuration, as David explained, it's different now. It's not, I can't tell you the measurements, but the placement of those uprights, the requirements now are different. But we were just, and it wasn't part of a house. It was this outside thing that was already there. In a pragmatic, different way of looking at things that wouldn't occur to us, that you had to, it'd be like if a board on your shed broke, you would just go fix it. Now, I would actually call conservation, because I don't even know if I could do that without checking on it. David is a good educator, by the way. So anyways, I'm very sorry about this. It was not intentional. I do understand going forward that there isn't much I will do without checking with you first. Outside of planting flowers.
Right.
And then I might consider checking.
Yeah, so, that's where things stand currently. And as I said, they do have a notice of intent that they've submitted for the permanent dock, which I think we will be taking back up again in the near future once we get to the time frame where the eelgrass study can occur, which is in mid-July. Brian, I don't know if you're on the call for this particular discussion or if you're here for something else.
No, I'm here for this, yes.
Okay. So as I mentioned, we are going to revisit the permanent pier proposal once the additional information is submitted. But so again, this is the violation. This is why Mrs. Signori was asked to come in and discuss, and so the commission could understand what's what. So here we are.
So I guess my first question, Dave, would be, are we considering this multiple violations, or are we kind of going to encompass this all into a singular violations?
I mean, it is two different violations. How it's treated by the commission is up to the commission, but it is obviously two separate matters. You had the one situation where there was an order issued and the conditions weren't followed, and then you have this totally separate matter, which was not permitted at all in terms of the rebuilding of the dock. So,
okay.
In my mind, the dock situation is a little more obviously significant in terms of a violation. We certainly would not have, again, permitted this as it is, which again, I believe is why we had the notice of intent for the more appropriate pier for this type of setting, which we're waiting to entertain and review once we get the additional information. So they are two separate matters.
So the first violation, the one to do with the septic, is that something that we would hold the homeowner responsible for, or would we hold that solely on the contractor because it's their is it their responsibility to notify you of the work being started, or is it the homeowner's responsibility?
It is always the homeowner's ultimate responsibility. The order of conditions is issued to the homeowner, not to the contractor. There is a condition in the conditions that says that the contractor is supposed to have the order of conditions with him, so he knows what the conditions are, which again also didn't occur. But to answer your question, the responsibility is on the homeowner to follow the conditions.
Okay.
And we do have $100 fine starting any approved work prior to required on-site inspection. So that would be the $100 fine.
Mm-hmm.
To the homeowner and then also to the contractor?
Yes, you can certainly
Yes.
issue. You can certainly issue
$100 to $100 to both for starting the work without on-site inspection.
Okay, so that answers the question on that. So I guess the second question is going to be the direction that we take with the dock, having been, essentially reconstructed without any approvals.
Yeah, so with regards to that was not something that was obviously permitted. It's not something that would have been approved in the way it was done. So, that is more along the lines of what typically would be the $300 fine.
Yep.
There goes
Now,
my tax money.
Well, the question has to be asked, is there any way we can allow that dock, these homeowners to use their dock this summer?
For me personally, I see I see a lot of safety issues with just putting something temporary over the top without actually doing any type of construction. Because anything you
Yeah.
build to put on there is going to be cumbersome to get up there in the first place. So
Meg?
I wouldn't feel comfortable in saying, yeah, I mean, construct something that you can put on it, from a personal standpoint. But I think from a, I don't think we should really give any type of recommendation on what can be done in the interim, just from, what I would see as a potential liability standpoint. I would just say no, not to use it at all. But that's just me as in one opinion. There's, still a handful of us that, can have their own opinion, but that would be my opinion, is to say that, no use of the dock until it is able to be used in the correct manner.
And I would just add to that, again, typically for a pier in a setting like this, that's one of the reasons to require an engineered plan, so we know the structure is sound and appropriate for the area. This was just something that was put together by the homeowner, so we have no knowledge of whether or not this thing's sturdy, it's going to stand up, and it may be solid, it may not be, it might get taken out in the first storm that comes by. We have no idea, because again, it wasn't designed by anybody in terms of an engineer. So I would have to say that, my recommendation would be along the lines of what Ron had said, because, without knowing this thing is stable and it wasn't permitted anyway, it's like you're allowing a violation to be allowed to be utilized. You know what I mean?
May I just ask one thing here? Would it be a possibility to have an engineer look at it to see if it would be safe, with the idea, and go for the permitting and everything, with the idea that if we are granted the permanent dock, this is all coming out and being built to whatever the new specs are? Basically, I mean, what he recreated was the same thing that's been there for 45, 55 years, 70 years, since late 60s. So
Dave, can you give us a side view of what it is right now? Because I think there is some height difference between the existing pier and the work being done.
Right, there is, because at the end of the part that's fixed into the sand, there's a ramp that affixes at one end of that fixed part, and it has rollers that roll back and forth on the actual floating dock as the tide goes up and down.
On the landward side, how are you going to get up onto that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we can't do something, I mean.
Yeah,
right now-
again, I don't want to,
I'm
sound,
talking with an engineer and input.
yeah, again, I think the commission should not allow any further additional
Okay.
attachments to this or anything, because it's just, it hasn't been formally submitted to us or reviewed or approved. There's already been alteration to the salt marsh, as you can see. I don't know. I just would have not a good feeling about allowing any additional work without it going through the normal permitting.
That's what I'm asking. So we can go to GAF or somebody for permitting to go forward with a.
You've already given us a plan.
But that's for the permanent dock. That's
right. So I think the point is, Mrs. Signori, is this would not have been approved by us. That's the whole issue, is we would not have approved something like this. That's the whole reason why GAF submitted a different concept, because they knew something like this would not have been approved.
Right, because they would be doing the current standard and everything.
Right.
Is there a possibility of going for a permit to do it as those plans would call for? If we don't get the permanent dock, at least we'd still have access to the floating docks as they are now.
Well, I think the application is in place for the permanent dock, and we're going to be reviewing that shortly, once we get the additional information, which
Okay.
should be within the month, I would say. Again, Brian might have a better sense of that, but I'm just throwing that out there as a guess. Do you have any sense of that, Brian?
No, we'll get that scheduled. I believe it's mid-July.
Right.
Is when the time frame starts. So we'll get out there and do a survey as soon as the time frame allows for that. I guess my only comment here is I think the only work, yes, it's all violation. It all shouldn't have been done. The Signoris thought they were doing the right thing, just kind of upgrading and replacing an existing structure that was there for the most part. But the work is pretty much completed except for the decking, and access from the ground could just be from a very small footprint. A few steps could be added. So I guess the question is, can they complete the small amount of work to utilize this for the next couple of months while we are still working through the permitting process for the pier? That's it. We can take an evaluation. We can take a look at it. I understand your concern about, we've got a storm coming up the coast now, and the potential for this to become an issue. We can see if we can evaluate that and alleviate that concern somehow. But is there some fashion to allow the small bit of work remaining to be completed and allow this use while we wend our way through the remaining permitting process?
Well, I just don't see how that's in any way illegal. There's no order of conditions to do any of this. So therefore, we can't just allow people to do work which is not permitted. So I would say that that's not, unfortunately, an option. In fact,
work can be allowed through an enforcement order.
Well, the original pier was not even licensed as well. So we've got an unlicensed structure that's being rebuilt with no permits. So yeah, I don't recommend that course of action by the commission. And again, this is nothing personal to you, Mrs. Signori. It's just the nature of the regulations and my recommendation to the commission.
One question is, how were we ever supposed to know about, years ago in the 60s, people just did things. And then nobody ever mentioned anything. And I'm hearing in the last 2 years about recording it and everything. How were we supposed to have learned about doing this?
I would say anytime there's a property with a coastal structure and somebody's going to purchase it, that's got to be part of your due diligence to look at that. So even in the 60s, it was a requirement to have a license, even in the 60s. Whether or not anybody did this or didn't do it, again, would have been a violation at that time had they not gotten the proper approvals. And for whatever reason, it's not been picked up on until recently. So like any site or any property, you have to do your due diligence to find out if things are properly permitted or if they're not when you're taking ownership of them.
I mean, it's been in the family this whole time, so there was no event that would have caused us to even question such a thing.
Was your family the ones who originally built it?
Yes, in 62, 63.
Okay, so you had a violation since 62 or 63, because back at that time, it required permitting by the state.
Amazing. And no one ever knew.
Well, a lot of people put things in those years with no permits. Then in the 90s, the state recognized this was a big problem and they allowed property owners to get their unlicensed structures permitted properly. There was a grace period, if you will, where they allowed that to occur, and it was publicized. And many homeowners took advantage of that and got their properties permitted. So again, I can't speak to why yours wasn't addressed. But that's the nature of where things are and where we're at currently.
Yeah, okay.
Last question, has all of the other material now been removed from the beach / march area?
Well, there's still more, and we just came off of a heat wave where we were working 12 and 17-hour days. We just came back down yesterday. We'd make like a quick 1-hour trip down here about the septic and everything. And hopefully we have a couple of young men tomorrow that are going to help get the rest of the, what we thought was construction material off the beach.
Yeah, so this that I'm seeing here has not yet been removed.
I can't see what you're looking at, but there's the old boards and things like that that will be removed when the boys come.
Dave, what you're looking at, that's all gone, yes.
Okay, that's all I was curious about. Very good.
Okay.
I don't have anything further, Madam
Sure.
Chair.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. I had to take a break. So what would you like?
So I think the motion is on the first violation for starting the work without talking to Dave is $100 fine to the homeowner and $100 fine to the contractor. And then as far as the unpermitted work for the dock is the $300 fine to the homeowner.
That's the motion.
Second,
I have a second. All in favor, Carol,
yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Alyssa, Ron,
Yes.
Sandy, yes.
Well, thank you for your time. And again, I am sorry. We will be much more mindful going forward.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you
All
for
right.
attending.
Thank you very much. All right. Good
Bye
night.
now.
Good night.
Next one, please.
Can I just ask Dave a question? Does what they put up there have to come down, or is it just gonna stay there like that, or what do they have to do now?
Well, I believe that's going to have to come down one way or the other because either they're going to get their new pier and that's going to take its place and that will have to be removed, or if for some reason that project does not get approved, then we would require that to get removed as a violation. But at this stage, I don't see that there's harm in leaving it for the moment until we find out through the hearing process about permitting their proposed permanent pier.
But they're not gonna be allowed to put anything on top of what they did.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. The last one we have on the list is for Paul Summers. And let me just get to that.
As you bring it, a couple meetings ago, we approved an extension of about 10 feet from the house closer to the road. Look what he did. Ta-da! Bring it up.
That was a good segue into that there, Sandy.
Ta-da!
Oh, wow.
So,
Where's the
so
house?
this
What
is
road
a-
is this again?
This is
Oak
a project
Street.
at 25 Oak Street, and we had an application submitted to us. It was an RDA for a small addition to the existing house between the house and the street. Okay. Then I happened to go by there and I see this, and I'm like, wow. They totally decided to make a full basement, redo the foundation of the existing house. Had I known that this was what was going to be proposed, I would have required a notice of intent right out of the gate. I wouldn't have even have talked about an RDA. But the homeowner had stated that once the contractor got into it, it was one of these things again where he kind of thought, well, geez, you know what? It might make sense to do this because of this, that, and the other thing. And before you know it, you ended up with this situation. So
Didn't we talk to him about this and say, he said he was going to make a porch coming out here, and we talked to him about not adding to his house?
No, I don't remember a porch. He just wanted I'd have to pull up the notes, but I thought he just wanted to extend the house 10 feet toward the road.
right, yeah, I'm gonna just quickly, while you guys are talking, pull up the
Do you see what's holding this house up?
Looks like a
Two
couple
piles,
of
two poles.
yeah, two lolly columns.
You got
Maybe
it.
three, yeah, maybe a third in the back, but it looks mostly like two, yeah.
But isn't that unbelievable?
I mean, it looks like one of those storms just rolled through and took off the back of the house.
So they kept going and okay. So
I mean, that's pretty gutsy by
now,
the contractor.
what happened was that the building inspector said that this was a very dangerous condition. And so they talked to Dave, and I believe the discussion was that they can put in the foundation and then backfill to remove this type of condition, and then come to us after the fact for permission to do the work. But you can't leave it like that in the neighborhood. So a foundation was added.
Yeah,
don't know.
because it was, it would have been a serious safety hazard to leave it as it was, obviously. Can you guys see this plan?
No, we're seeing the picture.
All right, hold on a second. Let me just swap that.
Because there was no indication that there would be a brand new cellar in a crawl space, which what existed there before was a crawl space.
Who was the contractor? Do we know who the contractor was?
I don't.
I can find that out from the building permitting, but I don't know off the top of my head. Hold on here. So when we initially had this submitted to us, this was the proposed project.
There's the proposed distinction, 5 feet on one side and 13 on the other. That was what was supposed to happen.
So obviously a lot more happened. So we, as Sandy said, he was allowed to put the foundation in to sort of eliminate the safety hazard. But he is going to have to now come back with a notice of intent and stop any additional work until that happens. So that way this can get addressed to make sure that, you know, the foundation's appropriate and so on and so forth.
Okay, I have a picture I took today of them backfilling. So the bottom one is them backfilling around the foundation, which has been placed in. And this is what it looks like. They're with the foundation all the way around the inside, the outside of the structure. So that's what it's like today. So they were getting rid of the they were filling in so you didn't have this major hole in the ground that someone could fall into other than cellar.
So this qualifies as unpermitted work, correct? Because
Yes.
it's way out of the scope of what we were initially
That's right.
discussing.
Yep.
So I guess at the end of the day, you've already discussed with the applicant that full notice of intent is now going to be necessary before any continued work.
Yes.
And then obviously the issuance of a fine to both the homeowner and the contractor for the work.
If you want to make that motion.
So the motion is that no further work is to be continued until we have a full notice of intent before us to determine what can and can't be done. And then the issuance of a $300 fine to both the homeowner and the contractor for the unpermitted work.
That's the motion.
Second,
I have a second. All in favor, Carol,
yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes,
Alyssa,
Yeah.
Ron, Sandy, yes.
Should the, too late.
What?
I wonder if it shouldn't say the notice of intent to determine what can be done, but an accepted notice of intent, of intent, something like that. Doesn't matter.
No, yeah, I mean, whatever they put before us still has to be fully approved. I mean, we could not approve what they've done and they have to correct it, but
Yes. I mean, if we had known this, my gut feel is we would have permitted it.
With conditions, right?
yeah, with conditions, correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just also on Oak Street, we recently did, what was it, permitted the people to put in a driveway.
An asphalt driveway,
Yes, and
non-permeable.
by today, Dave, and there was no hay bales. And all the work has been done other than the asphalt. So no hay bales. I was quite surprised.
You see any Cape Cod drain?
They haven't done the permit, they haven't done the asphalt yet.
Have they done the drains off the sides of the lot?
No, I don't think it's completed at this point. I'm gonna take a ride by there tomorrow and take a look
Okay.
at it because again, this I think is a case where I didn't get proper notification of the start of work. So I've got to go by and take a look at this.
Okay, then we're down to certification of compliances.
Yes, so the first one is for a project at 253 and 255 Great Neck Road for Howard Whiteside and Janet Cook. And this involves the replacement of a culvert pipe that goes under the driveway access road to homes beyond this road, and also for the control of invasive plant species, which was Phragmites. So the project has been completed according to the order of conditions. So I would recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance for that project.
I move that we accept the.
Second.
I have a motion to issue a certification of compliance. I have a second. All in favor, Carol,
Yes.
Kwame, Michael,
Yes.
Alyssa, Ron, Sandy.
Yes.
Okay, next, please.
Next is for a project that was done at 50 Great Neck Road. This was a septic upgrade. The owner at the time was Lynn Bell, and the property has since been sold to the new owner. That septic project has been completed. So again, I would recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance for that project.
I move we accept the certificate of compliance for this project.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, Carol,
Yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Mike, Alyssa, Ron, Sandy.
Yes.
Next.
The next site is in Rose Point, 43 Kennedy Street. And this involved work for the construction of a single-family home and some landscaping work at this location has been completed as well. So I would recommend the issuance of this certificate of compliance for this property as well.
I make a motion to accept the certificate of compliance for 43 Kennedy Street.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, Carol,
yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Michael,
yes,
Alyssa,
Yes.
Ron, Sandy. Okay. Next.
The next site is 152 Marion Road, which is kind of across the street from Shaw's in that area. But this property is right near the stream that comes under Route 6 from the Shaw's side, comes under Route 6 and flows out into the marsh. The project that was proposed at this site involved a block retaining wall along the bank of the stream and the removal of some stormwater drainage pipes that were leading right down and dumping right into the stream, and replacing those with some dry wells. The applicant never came forth and did anything with the block wall. They chose not to do that. But they didn't do anything else. They basically left the site as it was prior to the submittal of the notice of intent. So they're trying to get a certificate of compliance. The current owner is, who is not the applicant here, because he's looking to sell the property now. And so the fact that the fact that the initial wall wasn't done, I don't necessarily have a problem with, but the gutter downspout pipes all still are dumping right down into the stream. Literally, the end of the pipe is almost in the stream. And the initial proposal wanted to get those removed and replace those with some dry wells so that the runoff wasn't just going directly into the stream. So that hasn't been done. So I don't know how the commission wants to address this, because basically nothing that was approved or proposed has been undertaken.
So this was 2 owners ago. We
This-
give the
this-
owner
this-
one.
This particular owner was not the owner when this was permitted. It was the previous owner who permitted this work.
So he bought the property. He bought the property without anybody noticing there was a order of conditions. And then he's trying to sell it to somebody else, and finally someone who looks at deeds or whatever notices it.
That's correct.
So I think that the attorneys that were hired for the last closing didn't do their job and go to the title company and make sure that there was nothing attached to this property.
Sounds like it.
So I guess the question lies is how we're gonna handle it, if we're gonna sign off on it and let it go, or if we're gonna make the changes have to happen before, the house is sold.
I would say I would like to see, obviously, these downspout pipes that are going right into the stream should not be there. We brought this up initially. This was one of these projects that sort of went undone, and now a couple of years have gone by and we're where we're at. And again, it's not the fault per se of the current owner. He didn't propose or try to get any of this work permitted. It was the previous owner. So he's now just trying to get the certificate of compliance so he can try to get a closing. So we could potentially, there's a couple options. You could not issue the certificate until the other work is done, meaning removal of the downspouts and the installation of the dry wells. Or you could issue the certificate contingent upon him just removing those pipes and not requiring him to put in the dry wells. That's still going to have water go down the hill, but at least it won't be directly, directed right into the stream.
Yeah, but that will erode the banking.
It could, yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky one. There's no doubt about it. But I just don't want to see this left where these pipes are just dropping the water directly into the stream,
Can they be directed to his front lawn?
The back of this house is like 2 feet from the drop off of this. It's like,
I know that, but can't he direct the downspouts to be directed to the front lawn?
I mean, I don't know how that would actually work, or if it would work. I mean, certainly he could do that to the ones on the either end of the house, but there's one in the middle of the house that obviously you couldn't do that with. I think
So
I think
has this house, Has this house already been put on the market? It has an offer. It's supposed to be going to closing, but this is holding it up.
It definitely is on the market. Where it stands relative to a buyer and a closing, that I honestly don't know, but I'm assuming that's the case because that's why they're looking to get this done, you know? Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be seeing it right now.
Yeah.
But I do believe there's a buyer and so forth. There's some people on the line here. I don't know if any of them are associated with this particular site, which is the 152 Marion Road. Okay, I'm not
Excuse me
seeing
for-
anybody saying they are, so
Can I ask a question? Dave,
yes.
what exactly, I don't know what a dry well is and how big a deal it is.
A dry well is basically a hole in the ground filled with either a concrete structure or maybe some polycarbonate structure which would accept groundwater versus having it just run over the ground or directly into a water body or something. So it's a way to infiltrate the water into the ground versus having it run over the land.
And is that a big deal? I mean, is it a very expensive thing to have done?
It's something that's going to cost a few bucks. Yeah, you're talking a couple $1,000 anyway to get this thing installed. Yeah, I would say somewhere in that neighborhood.
So it's kind of like it's a tough situation because it's like you don't want to hold up and have somebody lose the sale of the house, but you also don't want it to not be corrected.
You don't want to get back onto.
Yeah, so I think, there's the option again to grant this with the condition that this be addressed before the certificate is released. Now,
So I mean, I guess there could be, they could figure out some type of verbiage in the sale of the house that can say, hey, listen, we're going to sell the house is going to go through, and they can figure out the dollar amount of whatever it is, and then that would be something that could be paid for at the closing of the house by the seller, and then be done after the house has been transferred to the new owner. So there is a way for it to be done.
Held in
Yes.
escrow.
yeah,
So basically.
So that is an option and might be the best way to handle this. That way we wouldn't interfere with the person's sale, but still get the thing completed.
Yeah, so I think that there's definitely a way for it to be done where, it might be a split cost between the owner and the buyer, to say, hey, we know it's going to cost $3,000. I'm willing to give you $1,500, but that it's got to be done before you're going to be able to get this thing signed off on. We can let the attorneys figure out what the verbiage would be, but I think something like that might help, especially if they're in a position where they do have a buyer, and we know the market is very volatile and things could change tomorrow, and they might be trying to get this done before any significant changes might happen.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yes. Is that your motion?
So yes, that's my motion.
Second,
I have a second. All in favor. Carol,
yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Lissa,
Yeah.
Ron, Sandy.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, the last one is 388 Marion Road, and this is the property that's the hotel along the Weweanick River, just as you're heading over the Route 6 bridge heading towards Marion. This is a very old order which involved some work in the buffer zone to the beach in the river. I would recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance. It looks like things have been done for many, many years, but this just never got addressed. So I would recommend the issuance of that certificate of compliance.
Make a motion to accept the certificate of compliance for 388 Marion Road.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. All in favor. Carol,
yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Michael, Lissa,
Yes.
Ron, Sandy.
Yes.
Yes, I see it's on the market. My
Actually,
best friend in high school her parents used to own that place. It was that long ago. Okay, reorganization. At the beginning of each fiscal year being July 1st, we asked the boards to reorganize. We have a chair, a vice chair, and a representative on CPC from Conservation. Does anybody want to do any of those jobs?
Yeah, I'll do something.
Sandy.
You're vice chair,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There we go.
and
We're
I'm the
good.
chair, and I am the representative on CPC from Conservation. Does anybody want a change?
I so move that we accept these fine folks.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's the motion.
I second it.
I have a second. All in favor. Carol,
Yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Michael, Lissa,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Sandy. Okay. Now, the next meeting will be in person, and we will do that from now on. I need to notify you that Save the Pine Barrens has submitted an open meeting violation because of a lack of minutes.
Wait a
I've
minute, can we
sent-
go back, to the meeting format? Has the commission decided that's what we want, in-person meetings?
Well, we can't, it was not put on the agenda to be discussed.
Well, we can discuss it. It doesn't have to be on the agenda.
But we can't
It just
vote on
doesn't
it.
make, sense to jump back and forth from in-person to Zoom, to in-person to Zoom. If everybody wants to go in person, great. If everybody wants to stick with Zoom, then we should just stick with Zoom. So I would like to get a sense from the commission members, what they prefer. You know, personally, I would say I prefer the Zoom meetings. That's just me. You guys may not feel that way, but that's the way I would say. So whatever you guys want to do is fine.
I will ask for opinion. Carol, Zoom or in person?
In person.
Kwame, Zoom or in person?
Hybrid.
I
No,
can't
no,
do a hybrid.
Kwame, you can't say that.
Sorry. It's Zoom.
Okay, Michael,
I personally liked in person. I thought it was great last time we met, but we'll see what how the rest of us goes.
Alyssa.
Go ahead.
Person.
Ron,
I'm in person too. I mean, I'm over the Zoom stuff. I really am.
Denise,
I prefer in person, but I
and I,
also.
yep,
How am I ever going to become a voting member of this?
it's coming up shortly.
It's coming.
Dave and I,
I want to
Dave
vote.
and I have been talking about it, Denise, and we were thinking about a couple more meetings, being this one and one more, and then the next one, we would make a recommendation for you to become a voting member. So Dave and I are aware of your waiting in the wings.
I am waiting in the
Yes.
wings.
So you'll probably find it on the July 21st agenda.
Thank you. But I like it.
All right, so it sounds like
The-
we'll go back to in-person then. So I'll make the arrangements and notify the parties, the applicants, that it will be in person, and we'll go with that.
All right. So for me to continue on, we have a Save the Pine Barrens has an open meeting violation because lack of minutes. We have the public records request by Ms. Bicky for certification, for copies of the certification of receipts of the open meeting laws. So that plus the previous open meeting violation by Nora Bicky on lack of minutes. That's what we currently have. I just wanted to keep you aware of what has been filed against conservation.
Let me ask, how are you going to handle both of these? Like, how do we handle this moving forward on each one?
We have to get our minutes in order.
So who is responsible for the recording of the minutes?
I have to pay somebody.
Well, we
The
currently
recording-
have the woman who was working with me before she retired, Kelly Barrasso. She was the administrative assistant that I worked with for I don't know how many years, 15 years or whatever. But she retired and they chose not to refill her position. So for that stretch of time, minutes weren't getting done because she wasn't around to do them anymore. Now she's been hired back on as sort of a contract employee to do minutes to try to catch us back up again. So that's where we are. So hopefully that can get caught up, and going forward, if they don't keep her on or don't refill the position, then someone, whether it be myself or someone on the commission, is going to have to do those minutes to keep them up.
Now, keep in mind, this is a permitting board, so our minutes must be clear, concise, accurate, enough to stand up in court. And it isn't just putting a little note together. We discussed it and voted or whatever. It has to have some type of detail behind it. If you take a look at prior minutes, or even the minutes that were just approved for February 2020, you get an idea of how concise these minutes must be, or look at, or say, an open meeting set of minutes. Very casual because there's no permitting or expected lawsuits out of it. So it isn't just something recording saying, we talked about 11 Wareham Ave and this was our vote. We talked about, 31 Agawam Lakeshore Drive and we permitted it and this was our vote. I mean, that type of thing. Yeah, it's going to be hard for minutes to be continued once they no longer have funds for Kelly.
Now, I should make a statement here that Miss Vicky and I are neighbors, and I have had no conversation with her regarding this matter at all. And obviously this meeting right now is being recorded. So I will say that. Moving forward though, is that how we're basically gonna handle both of these matters? I mean, say for the past year and a half, sounds like going back to say February 2020, these meetings, the meetings have been very, I guess, haven't been recorded that well, so forth.
No.
So how's our response going to be to say to both these matters? I mean,
It's work in progress. These
work in progress. That's
meetings
all.
the meetings are all on tape. They're all been recorded.
So I was just
they've all
thinking.
been, they've all been recorded on video, so they're all available to watch on video. Yes.
All right.
Someone has to sit down, watch those videos, and write down everything that happened.
Yes, keep in mind.
Not necessarily
Sorry,
word for word, but
what
yes.
you do is you would, Mr. Pichette does a recording, a statement regarding, he describes the project, that must be included in the minutes. Then anything that is discussed that we add on for a order of compliance, a standard order of conditions, anything that we add on to that, how the vote was and that type of thing. So, or whether a hearing was continued until another date, that type of has to be included in the minutes. Take a look at 2.5 and 2, the February minutes that we just approved. It gives you a hint of what has to happen.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
And one last thing, Union Pond. Dave, there is a path on the very back side of Union Pond that goes down to that pond. They cut through the fence.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, I saw the one way down the far end. Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm mentioning this for is when Union Pond was permitted by us, there was a note that there'd be no path from Union Pond down to the pond. And
except for the one location which was permitted for access.
And that was at the clubhouse.
Yes.
Dave noticed some boats on the up on the shore, and sure enough, someone created a path, cut through the fence, and got access to that pond. So I don't know what's going to happen, but just that we said we would be looking at it to make sure that that department there, that housing development was in compliance with their order of conditions.
Yeah, I'll have to contact the property manager and make them aware that they need to get that addressed.
Yep, okay. I have nothing else. Does anybody have anything they want to add?
Move that we close the meeting.
I have a motion to adjourn.
That's right.
Second,
I have a second. Carol,
Yes.
Kwame,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Melissa, Ron, Sandy. See you on, in person, July 21st, room 320, Multi-Service Center at 6:30. Thank you very much, and it's been a long evening.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
everybody
all.
that
good night, everyone.